There was no hope on that first Sunday after they crucified my Lord. There was only grief, despair, sadness, and dread. The women and I had an unfathomable job to do. You see, when we put my Lord in the grave early on Friday night, there was no time to clean him, so he wasn't prepared for burial. We had no choice but to leave him. The Sabbath was beginning, and everyone was watching us, so we left him there. There was no hope that Sunday after they crucified my Lord. There was only grief, despair, sadness, and dread. We had to clean the man we loved most in the world. He had open wounds everywhere. His body was caked in his blood, vomit, feces, and all the vile things that people threw at him as he carried the cross through Jerusalem. And the decay. Oh, the decay that comes early and fast in the Jerusalem heat. We carried the frankincense, the myrrh, the shroud, the soap, and so much water. It was so heavy that it hurt our backs. There was no hope that Sunday after they crucified my Lord. There was only grief, despair, sadness, and dread. We walked in silence. What was there to say? Towards the garden where they had laid my Lord, his mother got there first. Then I heard a scream. It was more than a scream. It was more than a wail. It was almost inhuman, so deep within her that it was primal. "No," she cried. We ran to her. What on earth happened? Then we saw. The stone had been rolled away, and my Lord was gone. We all began to cry, scream, crying out, "Rabboni, Rabboni," looking for him all through the garden. He was gone. They killed him, and then they took his body? How dare they? There was this man watching us, just sitting there, and I thought he was the gardener. Then he said, "Woman, why are you crying?" So I asked him, crying so hard I could not catch my breath, blinding tears, snot running down my face, "Sir, if you have taken my Lord, would you please tell me where you put him, so that I may go get him?" Then he said in a voice I had heard 1,000 times before, "Mary." It was Jesus. He was alive and he was perfect. The only evidence of his crucifixion were the holes in his hands, his feet, and the wound on his side. He was beautiful. I ran to him, wanting to throw myself in his arms, but he stopped me. "Mary, don't touch me. I have not yet gone to the Father, but go tell the others that I am alive. I have risen." He told me, to share the most important message ever uttered. He has risen. He is alive. No, there was no hope on that first Sunday after they crucified my Lord. There was only grief, despair, sadness, and dread. But then my Lord rose from the dead, and now he is alive, and every morning there is hope. He has risen. He has risen indeed.
I betrayed him. I promised him the whole time I would never betray or abandon him. I did both. He even fed us that night. He fed me, he fed all of us, and then we scattered. Everyone blames Judas, poor Judas, but the rest of us were really no better. I mean, I'll never forget those words when Jesus said to me,
"Peter, you are my rock."
And look what I did. He should have called me his pebble. I was there in the courtyard as they took him away to be crucified. I stayed next to the fire with the others, Some of them pointed at me and shouted, "You are the one. You are one of his followers." "No, no," I yelled. "I've never known that man." They accused me 3 times, and I denied Jesus 3 times. And then the cock crowed, just as he had predicted. He walked by at a distance, and as they took him away, and we made eye contact, then I realized what I had done. I had promised him I would never leave his side, but I betrayed him. And then I wept. The guilt was overwhelming. How could I do that to him? He believed in me. He even believed I could walk on water, just like he did. But I took my eyes off of him because I was afraid of the storm that was raging around him. I didn't want to get caught up in it. And so I abandoned him to his death. Then Mary came and told us that he had risen. How could that be? I ran to the tomb to find him. Once, a little later, when we were at the beach, he asked me,
Peter, do you love me?
I said yes. He told me.
Then feed my sheep.
He told me 3 times to feed his sheep. It was then that I realized that even though I did the worst thing I could have ever thought of, abandoning him, betraying Jesus, and denying him 3 times, he forgave me. He still believed in me. That kind of love, unconditional love, that kind of grace, I don't deserve. I don't deserve it. I can't believe it. But it's real.
I betrayed him. I promised him the whole time that I would never betray or abandon him, and I did both. He even fed us that night. He fed all of us. He fed me, and then we scattered. I'm the one to blame. I deserve whatever I get. I mean, I betrayed and abandoned all of them for just 30 pieces of silver. All of us men promised that we would stay with him until the end. We thought we were so tough, willing to give our lives to the new kingdom he was going to create. He kept telling us these short stories about powerful kings and powerless peasants. I always thought he would be the powerful king and together we would destroy our enemies. Turns out he was more like the powerless peasants and wanted us to be more like servants, not conquerors. I began to see that he really meant it when he said we were going to love our enemies. That God's kingdom wouldn't come through violence, but through radical love. None of us really believed him, but I'm the worst of them all. I betrayed him, and then they killed him. I heard rumors that he rose from the dead. Rumors that he even forgave Peter. The thought crossed my mind that he might forgive me too, but then I came to my senses.
Judas, I forgive.
I mean, that kind of love, that kind of grace, I don't deserve it. I can't believe it. It can't be real.
I doubt it. Thomas, they said to me, we have seen him. I said, no way, I replied. Unless I see the wounds in his side, I won't believe it. I bet some of you have doubts too. I mean, who's ever heard of someone dying and rising? I'm skeptical. Sure, we've all heard the myths of dying and rising gods, but we know those are all myths. There are some of us who believe at the end of time everyone will resurrect, but that's going to happen much later. No one thought someone would rise from the dead before the end of time. So no, I refuse to believe it. I mean, it was a total failure. We expected him to conquer the bad guys, not to be conquered by them. Why would God raise up a total loser? I didn't believe it. Except then he came to me and he said,
Thomas, put your finger here in the wound on my side.
so I did. I had no idea what to say next. I was in awe. So I blurted out, my Lord and my God. And do you know what is even more remarkable than putting my finger in his side? He knew that I doubted him. And yet he didn't hold it against me. I mean, there he was right in front of me, and I still couldn't believe what I was seeing. I must have been hallucinating. Or someone was playing a trick on us, maybe? But no, it was real. I don't know how to explain it, but it was more real than anything I've ever experienced. You know what? I still have my doubts about the whole thing, but I've learned that it's okay. It doesn't bother Jesus. After all, I have doubts, but the point is that he believes in me. He believes in us. So I've decided that I'm going to act like it's true. You know, love is stronger than the forces of evil in this world. That's hard to believe sometimes, I know. Sometimes I have my doubts about that too, but it's true. That's what the whole thing means. I can't explain it other than saying love is stronger than my doubts, than my betrayal of him, and even stronger than all the evil in the world.
Mom, it's gonna be okay.
No, it's not. I yelled at him. I am your mother. Your father is gone. You are the oldest, and I need you to be around. Your family needs you. Why don't you and that nice girl Mary just settle down and get married and have a nice life together? I knew it wouldn't work. He had his mind set, or maybe God set his mind. I just couldn't stand the thought of losing him. Deep down, I knew what he had to do, and I knew what the religious and political leaders would do to him. Ever since his birth, I knew that he would cause the downfall of many rulers. He would bring down the powerful and raise up the lowly. I even sang about that before he was born. But I'm his mother. It was just so hard to know he would be crucified. It was like a sword pierced my soul. But he reminded me to trust. Yes, the powers would kill him. But remember, God's love is stronger than death. Nothing in this world can separate us from God's love. Not corrupt religious leaders, not violent politicians, not even death. So I followed him to the cross. I listened to my son cry out in pain. I wanted to run over there and take him down. I wanted to protect him. But he kept telling me that it would be okay. To trust that somehow death doesn't have the last word. That even though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we will fear no evil. Because God is with us. And there's light and love and life on the other side. I know this now because my son lives. He is risen.